Not even miss a day's fishing.
But it's a challenge for a mountain man like Eustace.
Basically, we have two.
A minute ago, everything shifted. The truth, long buried, is now out in the open, and Eustace Conway's secrets can no longer be hidden. His property, which was once a symbol of pride and success, has now become the site of a revelation that has sent shockwaves through his loyal fan base. The Mountain Men community, once full of admiration, now feels betrayed. Conway didn't just jeopardize their reputation. He left them questioning the authenticity of everything they believed in. For years, he painted a picture of perfection, one that portrayed him as an exception among reality stars. He lived as though he were above the typical fame-driven narratives, crafting an image of integrity and honesty. But that illusion has shattered. The reality, raw and unmasked, stands before us. No matter how hard one tries to pretend, the truth remains unyielding. Eustace's time is up, and there's no escape from the consequences. As he faces a trial, his future looks bleak, and no plea for mercy will change that. Eustace Conway's fall from grace is a tragic one. The man who once embodied the rugged backcountry life has now found himself at the edge of ruin. His years of hard work, which once built an empire of trust and admiration, now seem meaningless. The future holds nothing but years of regret as Eustace contemplates the mistakes that led to this moment. Will history remember him fondly, or will this be the end of his story? Only time will tell. But stay with us, subscribe, and turn on notifications to find out what happens next. Eustace Conway's journey to fame started on Mountain Men, where his unique connection to the wilderness set him apart from his peers. He dedicated his life to the Alaskan wilderness, carving out a path that most could only dream of walking. From the moment he entered the wilderness, he forged an unbreakable bond with the land, one that would ultimately define him. The struggles he faced in his youth prepared him for a life of hardship, but also for greatness. He learned to navigate the ups and downs of life with care and precision, using his experience to tackle every crisis head-on. His time on reality TV was more than just about surviving in the wild. It was about showcasing his mastery of the wilderness and proving that he was more than capable of thriving in conditions that most would find unbearable. Conway earned the title King of the Wildlife, and it was one that stuck with him throughout his career. He was a symbol of endurance and skill, representing the epitome of survival in the harshest environments. His rise to fame was steady, but no one could have predicted how his story would end. Eustace's most significant break came when he joined Mountain Men. His debut was met with skepticism, but as time passed, those who doubted him were proven wrong. He became the show's heart and soul, gaining the trust of viewers with his unwavering commitment to living off the land. His experiences, while unique, resonated with fans in ways that no other reality star could replicate. Conway was more than just a TV personality. He became a legend in his own right. But behind the scenes, secrets were buried. No one knew the truth that lay beneath the surface of his life. As the years went by, Conway's carefully constructed image remained intact until it all came crashing down. A minute ago, Eustace's world was shattered. Armed men appeared on his property unannounced and brought the truth to light. This wasn't just a challenge to his privacy. It was the moment his carefully cultivated persona was exposed for what it truly was. Conway, who had once been fearless, now found himself in a position he could never have prepared for. This wasn't the first time Conway faced controversy. In 2013, he made headlines for all the wrong reasons. At the time, his Turtle Island preserve, where he taught people about living off the grid, was raided by local authorities. The inspectors found multiple buildings that were not up to code and had never been permitted. Conway was given an ultimatum: bring the buildings up to code, tear them down, or face legal action. His response was fiery, but the damage had already been done. His health, too, was a major concern as he stood in that moment, unsure of what to expect. Meanwhile, his friend, speechless and bewildered by the entire situation, stood there in silence. He could sense that things were spiraling out of control. Conway, though shaken, stood firm, determined to face whatever was coming his way. His conscience urged him to stay resolute, even though every instinct told him to flee. As the soldiers combed through his property, the tension continued to build. They searched every corner of the house, looking for anything that might corroborate the accusations. But after what seemed like hours, they returned empty-handed. The leader's disappointment was evident. "You think you can hide it from us? You knew we were coming, didn't you? You've taken everything we would have found." Conway remained silent, but defended himself. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've never been involved in anything like that. And besides, I've always been in the public eye. How could I hide something like that?" The leader, dissatisfied, turned to his men. They discussed their next move in hushed tones while the crowd outside waited anxiously. "What's the holdup? They should charge him already," one person in the crowd muttered. Another, a die-hard fan of Conway's, responded fiercely, "You need to get help. You're sick in the head if you think he's guilty." The debate continued as the military leader gave orders to search the grounds outside the property for any evidence that might have been hidden. The crowd watched, knowing this would be the moment that defined Conway's future. Eustace, along with his friend, could only watch in disbelief as everything around them spiraled further out of control. Eustace, torn between fear and defiance, kept to himself, hoping for a miracle. At that moment, his friend looked at him and asked, "Are you involved in what they've accused you of? Please tell me the truth." Eustace, shocked, answered, "Frederick, you know me. Have I ever given you any reason to doubt me?" His friend, still uncertain, replied, "No, but this is different. It doesn't make sense." Eustace looked him in the eye and said, "We'll get through this. There's a conspiracy here, and it's much bigger than us." The group of armed men arrived, ready for their task. With precision, they started their search, using the surrounding trees to their advantage, as they mapped out the area with the skills they had acquired in military training. The leader closely observed his team as they carefully combed every inch of the property. However, after 30 minutes, they found nothing. Yet they weren't ready to give up. Undeterred, they pressed on. After about 20 more minutes, the leader's voice cut through the air. "There, Charlie!" He pointed to an area near a tree. A faint murmur rippled through the crowd outside, as people strained to catch a glimpse of what was unfolding. The leader moved toward the spot and instructed his team to dig. After digging about 2 feet, they found nothing. Still, the leader wasn't convinced. Something about this area didn't sit right with him, but how he knew, no one could explain. He wasn't going to leave until he was certain. They dug deeper, and after a few more feet, the leader's voice rang out, "Here it is!" At that moment, fear gripped Eustace and his friend. "What could that be?" Eustace's friend asked, his voice shaky. They unearthed a thick, black, waterproof bag, its contents unknown. The men carefully lifted the bag and placed it on a flat surface for examination. A sense of relief washed over the leader as he saw the discovery, and the onlookers outside felt the same way. "Untie the bag," he commanded. At that moment, every exit was blocked, and Eustace and his friend were in plain sight. Eustace's friend, with a calm whisper, said, "What have you done, man?" "You said you didn't know about this," Eustace, fighting back tears, replied, "Believe me, I don't know anything about this. If anything was found, I swear I have no clue about it." Eustace's heart sank as he realized the magnitude of the situation. Everything he had built seemed to be crumbling before his eyes. The adage, "It takes a long time to build but only a day to tear down," echoed in his mind. This wasn't just a saying, it was happening in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. How difficult it was to accept that everything he had worked for. This incident marked the beginning of the end for Conway's reign as a reality TV star. Now, as his past catches up to him, Conway finds himself exposed once again. The armed men who came to his property were not just there to question him. They were there to unearth the secrets he had buried. The man who once seemed invincible now faces the harshest truth of all. As Eustace Conway's world unravels, we are left with one question. Will he ever recover from this? Will he ever reclaim the trust of his fans? Or will he forever be remembered as a man who lived a lie? Only time will tell. Human beings have built their own houses for thousands, even millions of years, Eustace Conway says, his voice filled with frustration. And now, we can't even build our own house using materials that grow right on our land? That's not a regulation issue. That's a county problem. That's a human rights issue. Conway and the officials went back and forth on this matter for a while. Finally, there was intervention from the Republican-dominated legislature, which introduced a bill to exempt primitive camps and farms, including sheds, barns, doghouses, and other structures from the building codes. Conway managed to win over the officials, and soon enough, he was back in business. But years later, just a minute ago, the truth about his deeds came to light. He never imagined that the skeletons in his closet would ever be exposed. Now, he faces the harsh reality of being held accountable for years of deceit. Just a minute ago, Conway, who had been away on a business trip, made his way back to his property in Triplet. He had spent some time interacting with his business partners, but little did he know, this day would change everything. As he approached his property, he unknowingly walked right into the trap set for him by a group of men who had been waiting for this day. A team of 15 highly trained military personnel followed him from his trip, and as soon as he was close to stepping onto his land, they ambushed him, demanding that he freeze. Onlookers, who had a clear view from afar, watched the unfolding scene with curiosity. News of Eustace's capture spread quickly through the neighborhood, and soon a crowd gathered outside his property, eager to witness the shocking turn of events. "This doesn't seem right," one onlooker murmured. "I've never heard of anything like this involving Eustace. Could it be that he's been pretending all these years?" Another voice from the crowd chimed in. "I always knew he wasn't what he seemed, playing the good guy just to get the public's attention." The crowd continued to murmur, their eyes glued to the property, trying to understand what was happening. The armed men, faces hard and filled with purpose, stepped onto Conway's land. The leader of the group spoke with a calm yet threatening tone. "Cooperate with us, and things will go smoothly. But if you resist, be prepared for a rough ride." Eustace, sensing the gravity of the situation, dropped his defenses and asked with a faint voice, "What is it that I'm being accused of?" The leader responded, "We've been receiving reports from people in the neighborhood about unusual activity happening at night. We're here to investigate." Eustace, maintaining his composure, explained, "For as long as I can remember, I've been watering my flowers at night. It's just something I've done for years. It's a routine." Although that wasn't the real reason the military personnel were there, it was part of the story they were weaving. Eustace, feeling more confident, hoped they would call off the search. However, this was only the beginning of a much darker series of events that were about to unfold. Just as the leader spoke to Eustace, a visitor unexpectedly showed up at his doorstep. Unaware of the turmoil unfolding, the friend entered, only to be caught in the middle of the crisis. Eustace, despite the overwhelming tension, explained the situation in a few quick words, and his friend stood in shock, unable to do anything but observe. Outside, the crowd grew larger, eager to witness the outcome of the escalating situation. But it wasn't until the armed personnel entered the house that the true gravity of the situation became apparent. Inside, the leader turned to Conway and asked, "Who is this man with you?" Eustace replied, "He's just a friend who came by to visit." The leader's eyes narrowed. "So he's part of the group you've been running your shady dealings with?" Both men stood frozen, confused. The leader continued, "We know about your secret activities, Conway. We've heard you've been involved in shipping arms, and today is the day your past catches up with you. If we find anything, you'll rot in jail." Eustace was struck with a sudden realization. He was in deep trouble. The implications were enormous, and the thought of facing such serious consequences weighed heavily on him, was now slipping away. and no amount of money could undo it. One of the soldiers began to untie the waterproof cover, and what they uncovered next was unimaginable. Inside were stacks of bullets wrapped in white foil and some shotgun cartridges. These weren't brand new, but their preservation meant they were still in usable condition. As the soldiers unwrapped the findings, the crowd outside whispered to one another, "It's over for you, Eustace. You'll remember this day for the rest of your life." The order came swiftly. The young soldiers were to handcuff Eustace and his friend. They followed through, and the discovery was moved to a platform for further examination. The leader turned to Eustace, asking again, "You said you aren't involved in arms dealing. So, what can you tell us about these bullets? Doesn't this point to a deeper involvement in something you don't want to admit?" Eustace, overcome with emotion, struggled to speak through his tears. "I've never done anything like this. You're accusing me of something I haven't done." The leader, unfazed, cut him off. "Your tears won't save you now. Own up to it, and maybe we can move on." The tension in the crowd grew, and whispers spread as they watched Eustace. "You've got all the evidence you need. Why wait any longer?" one person muttered from the back. Eustace's friend, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. "I'm no lawyer, but I know enough to say that you can't accuse someone without proper evidence." The leader, irritated, retorted, "You think I don't know the law? I've served in the military for 15 years. You can't teach me about justice." His words were intended to intimidate, but they had the opposite effect. The young man's calmness in the face of everything made the leader pause. As he walked away to process the situation, the friends exchanged a look. A moment of uncertainty mixed with a flicker of hope. The crowd outside continued to murmur, but soon the news about the arms being found on Eustace's property spread like wildfire. While some people had long been skeptical of Conway, others had supported him, only to now witness his fall from grace. The media wasted no time in jumping on the story, amplifying his downfall. But inside, Eustace wasn't finished yet. There was still a glimmer of hope. If the investigation turned in his favor, he and his friend might have the last laugh. Outside, though, many hoped he would be arrested and thrown into jail. Little did they know, the game wasn't over yet. The leader, after taking some time to reflect, called for his team to regroup. "There's a problem here," he said. "We can't just arrest them without solid evidence. This isn't a case of assumption. We need to be sure." "What do you mean?" one of the soldiers asked. "We found bullets and cartridges, but without proof they're tied to Conway. We can't just make assumptions. We could be penalized for acting without clear evidence," the leader explained. For the first time, the soldiers began to doubt their approach. A few minutes later, the leader spoke again. "You're right. We can't proceed without solid proof. We'll need more time to figure this out." He made a few phone calls and, after some discussion, decided to call it a day. Before leaving, he warned Eustace, "Don't think you're off the hook. We'll be back, and everything you've hidden will come to light. You won't escape justice." With that, the team left Eustace's property, leaving everyone in the dark about what had just transpired. As they left, Eustace and his friend stood there, shocked by what had just unfolded. They had narrowly escaped a worse fate, but the investigation wasn't over yet. Would Eustace be charged with arms trafficking? Only time would tell. For now, the reality star stood in silence, reflecting on his journey and the price of fame. He had learned the hard way that good relationships aren't easy to come by, but they had been the saving grace in this moment. As he waited for the results, a sense of relief washed over him. He was free for now, but the future remained uncertain. As the dust begins to settle, the future of Eustace Conway hangs in the balance. Will he face the full consequences of his actions, or will the truth eventually set him free? The coming days will tell whether he can rebuild his life, or if this is the beginning of the end for the reality star. One thing's for certain, nothing will ever be the same again. Stay tuned to this channel for updates on this shocking story as it unfolds. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you're always the first to know when the truth comes to light. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.